Let's get started.
Yes, let's get started. Hello, Canada. This is my second attempt at this. Just seems like every time I try to make an attempt, something weird glitches up. Whatever. Okay, so here we go. I wanted to talk about Sam Bankman-Fried. Okay, don't know why some people are calling him Fried, Bankman-Fried. It's not spelled that way. It looks to me like fried. And we're going to hope he gets fried and not freed. Because he deserves to be, well, not necessarily fried, but he doesn't, he sure doesn't deserve to be freed. He is going to be probably recorded in history as the greatest scammer of all time. He's got to be, he's more than Madoff, more than Enron. It's billions. It's billions and billions. It's huge. And he did it with the assistance of basically his parents and just marketing himself as being a social justice warrior. And yeah, I don't know. It's okay. Kevin O'Leary is going to have to come up in this somewhere along the lines, because how can Mr. Wonderful, our Canadian shark, well, I don't know if they call it the Shark Tank in Canada. What did they call it? I don't know. He was, a a venture capitalist that would be quite critical of anybody that was trying to be an entrepreneur, and he would scrutinize their businesses and invest in them if he felt that they were substantial, right? So he actually invested with Sammy here, and I don't get it. Seeing this interview on the New York Times interview, this guy's an idiot. And I don't know how Mr. Wonderful would go and interview with this guy and or look at any financial statements and come away thinking this was a good investment. But how did this guy do this? Like, he got multiple venture capitalists, supposedly over $1 billion, from just 10 investors. So, like, as in 100 million per investor. And he was able to pull this off with venture capitalist people. Now, my impression of venture capitalist people was that they would analyze a business up and down and up the yin yang, and not just throw $100 million at something without doing due diligence. Okay, where is everybody's due diligence? That is the question. Where is Mr. Wonderful's due diligence?
In front of this committee to be asked some questions, and he provided us with some very interesting answers. John J. Ray III says that the FTX leaders, people like SVF and Caroline Ellison, were completely incompetent. They had no experience. They should not have been managing any of this at all.
The FTX group's collapse appears to stem from absolute concentration of control in the hands of a small group of grossly inexperienced, non-sophisticated individuals.
Non-sophisticated?
Who failed to implement virtually any of the systems or controls that are necessary for a company entrusted with other people's money or assets.
Or $40 billion.
Some of the unacceptable management practices have identified so far include the use of computer infrastructure that gave individuals in senior management access to systems that stored customer assets without security controls to prevent them from redirecting those assets.
So it was
storing
just a
of certain
free-for-all.
private keys to access hundreds of millions of dollars in crypto assets without effective security controls or encryption.
I think they were just sending these private keys like in unencrypted notepad files, and they were dropping them like in Slack channels. Hey, do you have access to the DNC account? Yeah, I do. Do you need it? Yeah. Can you just Slack me over the private key? I need to move a couple million over to whoever's running.
Okay, so there's another that Ray guy is the one that is taking over as CEO of the companies that SBF, they keep calling him SBF, Fried, is now incarcerated. Okay, so they picked him up on Monday, and he had a hearing on Tuesday, and he's been denied bail. Ironically, his lawyers asked for bail, saying that he had significant real estate holdings in the Bahamas that would hold him to not being a flight risk. Well, no. First of all, he shouldn't be having any holdings anymore. Supposedly, he had a $130 million resort or holding a property that he was living in. Well, that should be seized. All of the properties that he apparently bought, I think he claims that, or someone claims that he bought a property for his parents, and he also talked about properties that were bought for visiting Silicon Valley experts that he would bring in, and some of them either he loaned money to them so that they could buy property, or he bought the properties so that they could live in them while they were visiting and helping with projects. It's all crazy. Any properties that he bought in the Bahamas should be seized now so that people can be made whole. He says that any of the U.S. people could be made whole, that any of the funds that were used on the spot trading platform for FTX, it's a spot account, so that means that there's no leverage, but that doesn't mean that he didn't use their leverage for other purposes. He might be delusional. And Japan, he says, could be made whole. Other international platforms, maybe not so much. I don't know. I didn't get into FPX or FTT. Thank God. I'm not that savvy, and I did get into cryptos, but thankfully I didn't fall into this trap. and I hope nobody else did either, but I know that there are many people that did. And we're talking several people that had all of their life savings. One investor had 35 million in his platform. Other people, well, of course, the initial investors had over 100 million each in investment. How did he got to billions of dollars, which is even more than that? Of course, that comes to what happened in the market, and I'll go there in a second, but who would invest with this guy? I don't know. Like, watch this. He's just an idiot.
Generous view, and the generous view is that you are a young man who made a series of terrible, very, very bad decisions. The less generous view is that you have committed a massive fraud, that this is a Ponzi scheme, a manipulation of the system. And I want to start there because I think that there's so many people who have that question, which is, what is this? And what did happen?
Yeah, look, thanks for having me. And at the end of the day, I was CEO of FTX, and that means whatever happened, wherever it happened, I had a duty. I had a duty to all of our stakeholders, to our customers, our creditors. I had a duty to our employees, to our investors, and to the regulators in the world, to do right by them, to make sure the right things happen to the company. And clearly, I didn't do a good job with that. Clearly, I made a lot of mistakes or things I would give anything to be able to do over again. I didn't ever try to commit fraud on anyone. I was excited about the prospects of FTX a month ago. I saw it as a thriving, growing business. I was shocked by what happened this month.
Yeah.
And, reconstructing it, where are there things I wish I had done differently?
Well, let's talk about some of the things you would want to have done differently. But I don't want this to be an abstraction for folks, because it's a lot of big numbers and often doesn't feel human. One of the letters I got, I want to read to you, Sam, because it's from a gentleman who said that he lost his life savings. And the subject line is, Sam Bankman-Fried stole $2 million from me. It says, Andrew, can you please ask SBF why he decided to steal my life savings and the $10 billion more from customers to give to his hedge fund, Alameda? Can you ask him why his hedge fund was leveraging long all of these S coins? I'm going to keep it polite for the kids. Please ask him if he thinks what happened was fraud. These are the kinds of letters that I've been getting repeatedly over the past several days. What do you tell this man?
Yeah, I'm deeply sorry about what happened. Here's, the long and short of what happened. And I'll start by saying, just to make a distinction here, you look at the US platform, you look at the international platform. The US platform, it's a US regulated platform with American users. To my knowledge, that's fully solvent, that's fully funded, and I believe that withdrawals could be opened up today, and everyone could be made whole from that none of these problems plagued the US platform. Then you look at the international platform, for their non-US users. And, as the letter says, Alameda Research did have a long position. And the international platform, it's a margin trading platform, it's a derivatives platform. It's a platform where all the clients were, going on, placing something as collateral, and using that to put on a position, whether that's a futures position, a spot position, a borrow, and what the exchange was storing was the collateral from all of those positions. Alameda Research was one of those that put on positions there. And as I try and reconstruct this, over the last month, I have limited access to data, but my view of it, from what I have been able to see, is roughly that basically, look, a year ago, Alameda had, I think, something like 10% leverage, had something like 10 times the assets of the position that it had on. Over the course of the last year, there were a number of market crashes that drove the value of those assets down and the leverage up. I think it was, to my knowledge, still under 2x leverage, as of a month ago. You look at what happened this month, and in a few days, all out, PR assault, which led to a total market collapse in a pretty short period of time, no bid-side liquidity. I think more than $10 billion wiped off in the matter of days. And realistically speaking, no ability for FTX to be able to liquidate that position and generate everything that was owed from it.
But I think the bigger question is where Alameda got the loan from.
Would you invest $10 with that man? Jesus, he's a moron. He can't even answer a question. And yeah, he's just something else.
There's been a genuine commingling of the funds that are of FTX customers that were not supposed to be commingled with your separate firm.
I didn't knowingly commingle funds. And again, one piece of this, you have the margin trading. You have, customers borrowing from each other. Alameda is one of those. I was frankly surprised by how big Alameda's position was, which points to another failure of oversight on my part. And failure to appoint someone to be chiefly in charge of that. But I wasn't trying to commingle funds.
Let me ask you this. The Wall Street Journal reported that Carolyn Ellison told Alameda staffers that Alameda used FTX client funds to cover loans that were being recalled because of the Luna-triggered credit crunch. Carolyn says that she, Sam, Gary were aware of this. How do you square that with what you originally said over Twitter, that this was an $8 billion accounting mistake?
So I'll point to two things. And first of all, obviously, I don't know what anyone else is thinking here. I can only talk about it from what I know, from what I knew. And a lot of this is reconstructing it over the last month. I have limited access to data, but what it seems like happened is in the middle of the year, a lot of, most of the borrow lending desks in the space blew out or closed down. And it seems like Alameda had, margin positions opened with them, and that it likely moved a bunch of that over to FTX this year when they shut down. And that means, I think it was over collateralized positions, but positions that involve substantial size and substantial US dollar size on the borrow side. In terms of the accounting mistake, again, looking through what happened, I think that there is a substantial discrepancy between what the financials were, what the audited financials were, the true financials, what the exchange understood. All of that was consistent, versus what the dashboards that we had displayed for Alameda's account there, which substantially under-displayed the size of that position. And so that's one of the reasons that I was surprised when we dug into everything at how big that position had become.
But would you would agree that there is a much more closely connected version of FTX International and Alameda than previously understood? Fair to say?
Yeah, given the size of the position, I think it was, if not in intention, it was in effect tied together substantially more than I would have ever wanted it to be.
Given the size of the position, we're still not told exactly what the size of the position was. He set up, okay, if you haven't figured out what was going on here, he was transferring funds between FTX and Alameda, and and 100 other entities that he ended up setting up. But now he's playing dumb and saying like he didn't, oh, I don't really understand what was going on, and I wasn't really paying that much attention to that entity, Alameda, which is the main entity. Like, unbelievable. This guy is lying through his ass. Okay? He's not. He. First of all, how did people invest in him? In him being. I don't know what his educational background is either. Like, he doesn't seem very educated. But he is supposedly a coder, and then he claims that he wasn't doing the coding. I don't know the coding. Like, what the fuck was your purpose anyway? He's a CEO, and he appoints this other woman as his girlfriend. It's even more brain dead than he is. Oh, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You'd have to watch all these hours of stuff to see how brain dead this whole operation was. But yet he had billions of dollars invested in him. It's just mind-blowing. How does this happen? How is it that regular, real people can't get $1 worth of investment, but people like him can get billions of dollars and get scammed? Yeah, it's called greed, okay? The only reason he got the billions of dollars is because people are greedy. And the people that invested with him saw 10x potential, growth, right? So as in, oh, here, I'll throw you $100 million and hoping that turns into $1 billion. Yet we can't get the same kind of investment for useful causes that might be only $100 that could turn into $1,000, right? Oh, it's this stuff. Of course, his ties to political people didn't quite hurt him. He's actually a brilliant marketer. I'll have to give him that. But I'm sure that was directed to him by his parents. So his parents are supposedly compliance lawyers. So Mr. Wonderful there, Kevin O'Leary, decided to invest with him just basically because his parents were compliance lawyers. So based on that, he didn't actually check out any of the paperwork for the corporations that Fried was doing. This just blows my mind. Total loss of respect for that guy. Well, I didn't respect him that much anyway. But Kevin O'Leary, holy crap. Mr. Venture Capital of Canada invested in this fellow and claimed that he was all good to go. And has claimed then since that, it was because his parents were compliance lawyers that he didn't think that, could be no way that his son would do some kind of a Madoff scam. Well, holy crap. Guess what? This is a scam. And there's no way in hell that this guy did not know what he was doing. Supposedly he wrote into the code different ways of hiding the transfers. Yeah, transfers of money was intentionally done between these entities. Okay, yeah, if you don't know what the whole sordid situation was, and he took anyone that put their money into FTX, just like Binance. Like, I've used Binance, I've used KuCoin, there's CoinSquare, I've used CoinSquare in Canada. You know, you put your money on these exchanges, and it's a given that that's your money, and you trade it to buy coins, BTC or Ethereum or whatever coin you buy. That's your coin, and that money is not used by someone else without your knowledge to leverage their own bets. Okay, especially like on a spot market, right? If it's spot, it's spot. It's, you put your money there, and it's one for one. You buy a coin, and you hold that coin. You just exchanged your money, just like buying a stock. You know, you exchanged your dollars for a stock, and that stock sits there on the exchange, and that's yours. It's not theirs. It's not the exchange's stock. It's your stock. You bought it, and it sits there, and it's secure until you trade it back in for dollars. You buy it back, you cash it out, and someone else buys it. Okay, so, but what he was doing was leveraging the money. Okay, and so there's the other part of exchanges is there's some exchanges where you can use leverage. So you have $100 worth of a stock or a coin in the margin account. So you put it in the margin account, and the exchange allows you to leverage it. So $100 can be leveraged up to 10 times. So you can actually buy like $1,000 worth of, I don't know, I haven't done that. I have done some leverage, and it didn't work out very well when these crashes happen, okay? Because when these crashes happen, they happen. And let's see, I'll show you this. Oh, yeah, okay. So this is what can happen. Hang on. Oh, geez, hang on. Yeah, so this is what can happen. This was last year, November. This was April this year. So in April this year was when we should have all sold. And a bunch of people did. Now, Mr. SBF there should have had the knowledge to sell. And he would have been fine. All of us would have been fine if we'd sold at this point, even, you know what I mean? Like, we missed out on this point, which was November 21, a year ago. Okay. And, you know, things went down and we went, holy carapo. And then they started to come back up. And I guess we were all hanging on there going, oh, well, you know, it's all going to be good again. And wouldn't you know, March. And it happened last year too, in May. But this year it was March, April. Fucking kaboom! Again. It all crashed. And this, it crashed. It crashed big time. Okay? It crashed. And it crashed again just lately. Okay, so this November crash is when stuff happened here with SBF. He ended up leveraging his positions. Okay. Most people, the rest of us, if you have a margin account, when the value of your tokens reaches a point to where you don't have enough cash or whatever, it hits 100% of value of what you have in it, and it gets liquidated, as in poof, just gone. You lose, gone. Anything you put in there and you put money against it, you leveraged, you basically borrowed against it, when that value hits zero, it's zero. It's gone. He set his accounts up to not hit that leverage zero liquidation, and he just kept adding and adding leverage into those accounts because it kept getting lower and lower and lower. And then we hit November here, and this last leg of this crash just it hit and it hit and it hit and he just didn't have anything left, which is amazing. And he was somehow supplying these accounts all the way along, but he didn't quite be able to stave off 2 days. It was like, basically he said November 6th he figured he's in trouble. November 7th he resigned. It's like, yeah, okay, one more day, one more leg down. He knew he was done. He should have been done way back here. Like, he's done. He should have been done. March. If he had sold off stuff here and realized that, okay, he's way over leveraged, you know, and that was already a down. That was a fucking huge down. From there, from May, like that, okay, so that was from November 21. Okay, and then you wrote out all of this. If he started this thing in 2019, okay, think about this. From 2019, I don't know exactly when he started this thing, but look at 2019. I mean, this is huge. This is low stuff. As in, he would have picked up Bitcoin at levels of $5,000 to $8,000. Let's see. Okay, mid 2019 peaked at 12,000 here. So if he would have had an low of $3,100, like he could have had Bitcoin at that $3,000 to $10,000 range. Now, and he had billions of dollars invested. So as in millions or even in millions at that point. Who knows what he had? Like, how greedy do you need to get? He could have bailed on all of that in early February 2001. Like, that would have been huge. And maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I don't know. Maybe he sold some of that off and then bought the $100 million properties. Like, who knows? Why was he fudging around with other financing then? None of this makes any sense. He could have done very well for himself and for others and been fine. But okay, yeah, it's, you have to understand where this Bitcoin thing went. If you squish it down like that, it doesn't look all that big, but he had investors back here and he could have ridden that up major money and sold up here. And even if he didn't quite catch that wave, he could have sold up here and been fine. But no, maybe he didn't. And then he ran into trouble in the middle of this year. I don't know. And then, but how did he not? And you know, this is July this year is when we hit this bottom, and then we hit this, and he didn't end up in trouble until here, until this November 6th of this year. So it's taken this last leg down to really put him out. Unbelievable. Anyway, the guy's a moron. Should we go back to watching his video? Because he's just a moron.
You did an interview earlier this summer with Bloomberg, and you were asked about the connection between Alameda and FTX, and you said that obviously came from the same place, because it started that way, and the same original people, but most of the remaining nexuses, you said, have dropped off. I know the people from Alameda decently well, almost as if you don't know what's happening there. And there isn't like a large amount, you know, of ways remain that we are actively working together. Anything like that. Alameda is a wholly separate entity. They're different offices.
Not.
Like different principal offices. We don't have any shared personnel. We're also not the same company. We not all are under the same corporate umbrella or anything like that. And yet it seems like Alameda people were living in the same penthouse where you may very well be right now, all together.
Most of Alameda was not there. I don't live there now, but or not there now. I have not lived there for much of the time. But you know, I did live with one or two members of Alameda for a little while. And I'll also say that, you know, as I was, you know, earlier this summer looking at the relationship, and this is a pretty big mistake and oversight of mine, I was viewing it primarily from the trading volume perspective, because that's what drives our revenue. And so when I was looking at how intertwined are FTX and Alameda, you know, I was looking at, well, what fraction of trading volume, what fraction of liquidity on the platform does Alameda represent? That had fallen off from something like 45% in 2019 to something like 2%. this year. But in terms of positions and balances, it was a much larger fraction. I hadn't been looking at that. That's a pretty big
But
oversight.
Sam, I think the question is whether you were supposed to have access to these accounts to begin with. You know, if I worked at a bank and was a bank teller, and I decided to leave the bank at the end of the evening and take the cash that I ostensibly had access to, even if I intended to bring it back to the bank later, even with more money to give them back, I still stole the money.
I mean, look, I wasn't running Alameda. I didn't know exactly what was going on. I didn't know the size of their position. A lot of these are things I've learned over the last month that I learned as I was sort of frantically digging into this on, you know, November 6th, November 7th, November 8th. Obviously that's a pretty big mistake on Mark. That's a pretty big oversight that I wasn't more aware. I think I was, you know, scared of, I was nervous because of the conflict of interest about being too involved. And
He's a lying sack of shit. He claims now that he wasn't oversighting that company just enough because of a fear of a conflict of interest. Well, holy hell, he is CEO of both companies. Don't you think you need to oversee the companies that you're CEO of? He's playing dumb. Absolutely just playing dumb right now. He's completely involved. There's proof that he changed code in his applications that would specifically hide the kinds of transactions that he was pulling off. Basically, he was taking customer funds from FTX, transferring it over to Alameda, that was somehow some kind of hedge fund thing, which is another thing that I'm really wondering about. What is this guy's qualifications to be able to create that company in the first place? Like, he seems like a moron. How did he get that billions of dollars of supposed, like, some kind of hedge fund in the first place? It's just bizarre. And then, so he takes customer funds and uses it into Alameda to pay off his loans in that and the investors' interest. It's just a Ponzi scheme. Like, just think of it as, it's just a Ponzi scheme. And the more suckers that went on to the FTX platform just fueled his Ponzi scheme, which is just unbelievable, because you wouldn't necessarily believe that. And I've platformed on my cash to, I use KuCoin, Binance, and yeah, that's about it. But, well, a couple of little things. But, FTX was touted as being a perfectly legitimate platform. And he had all these celebrities touting it. And Kevin O'Leary. Well, who wouldn't trust that it was all good? It was all legit. Oh my God, I didn't get there, thank God, but I think a lot of people did. And who knows now? And there's all these lawsuits from Southern District, New York, which is kind of suspicious because they're just not they're kind of corrupt. They're the ones that only go after Trump for weird things, but oh, that's the other thing. He was supposed to, the same day that they arrested him in the Bahamas, he was supposed to be giving testimony in the House. And apparently, so he's not able to give that testimony. And I'm thinking, well, did someone not want him to give testimony in the House, and that's why he was arrested, and then that would prevent him from speaking because he'd be then covered by not saying anything or not testifying because there's a open court case against him, so that would protect him. There might be something to that. I don't know. But it's awfully suspicious, the timing, that he was allowed to sit there in the Bahamas for almost 2 months and nothing happened to him until the day before he was scheduled to give evidence in the House.
When did the commingling of assets begin?
So, and again, lots of traders had open margin positions on FTX where they would have borrows of assets, where they would be short some asset against, against other assets as collateral. That being said, again, looking through this now, I think that position size for Alameda got substantially larger over the course of 2022, and that it was, I think, substantially larger by October of 2022, probably by July of 2022 than it had been in April.
But it sounds like it's fair to say that there was always a connection between Alameda and FTX, and almost, I mean, not almost, but from the very, very beginning, and then it never really stopped.
Well, I think it had been, in some ways, reducing. I mean, when you scroll back to 2019, Alameda and FTX were very connected in a number of ways. One of these was that Alameda was the primary liquidity provider on FTX. It was 40-something% of volume. It was the backstop liquidity provider. And you scroll forward to 2020.
You have tweeted about it. Caroline has tweeted about it. Others have tweeted about uppers and downers. And all sorts of things. There have been pictures taken of something called MSAM, which apparently increases levels of dopamine to the brain. It's actually for Parkinson's. Were you taking that as a patch?
So, it's funny hearing this. I had my first sip of alcohol after my 21st birthday, and I think I have maybe half a glass of alcohol a year, roughly speaking. There were no wild parties here. When we had parties, we'd play board games, and 20% of people would have 3/4 of a beer each or something like that, and the rest of us would not drink anything. I see any illegal drug use around me, at the office, at these parties, like, and when I say parties there, I mean like having people over for dinner is what that meant. And look, I can't talk about anyone else, like what they're prescribed between themselves and their doctors or psychiatrists. I can say for me, I don't know, like I've been prescribed various things at various times to help with focus and concentration. And I think they have done that. I haven't felt any of the sort of impacts that I think people have been theorizing here from it. And it's not a huge impact, in the first place. Anyway, I think, these have all just been totally on-label use of medications, and I think things that on the margin help me focus a little bit. I wish I had been a lot more focused over the last year.
I may have been unfocused in this last moment because I actually wanted to follow up on the question when we were talking about venture capitalists.
Yep.
Sequoia and Paradigm invested in you, but there have now been questions about the fact that you invested in them, and whether these were what some people describe in the business round-trip deals. Can you speak to that?
I mean, I think well after they had invested in FTX, I don't know the details, but I think there may have been a small investment into some of their funds. I think it was something that we did because I don't believe in what they were doing. It seemed like a good opportunity, and didn't think too much about it.
I'm curious, just on a very personal level, as we get close to ending this conversation, to the degree that there's been a lesson in this, and that what you see as your future at this point. I know you're taking it day to day, obviously, and I know you're an optimist as well. We've talked about that. But what do you think realistically is your future?
So, what is my future? I don't know what my far future is. And, you know, when you fast forward, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing, you know, a long time from now. I think when I look at, you know, at the near and medium term, what am I thinking? What I'm thinking is, and again, I don't know what's going to happen, and a lot of it's not in my hands at this point. But I want to be helpful wherever I can to regulators, administrators, you know, internationally who are working to, you know, to help FTX's customers, and I want to be helpful wherever I can on anything that could help bring a lot more value to those customers. And, you know, I don't know where that will lead. I can say that prior to filing,
lies.
In financing, a lot of fairly strong interest, you know, many billions of dollars worth. I don't, I can't make any promises about anything, but, I would have thought that there'd be, you know, a transfer pathway forward here that would bring more value to customers than what would happen if you just sort of sold everything off for, you know, for scraps. And I don't have confidence. I can't promise you anything.
Yeah, you got no confidence.
It's not really in my hands to a large extent, but
not in your hands. You're in
but
jail.
I think that it would make sense to be exploring that, because I think there's a chance that customers could end up.
170 years in jail is what he's looking at, and that would be ideal. They're also asking for, at minimum, that he's gonna never be able to be a CEO or in any control of any entity ever. And the guy's a fucking moron. I don't get it. How the hell did he even get to where he was? Unbelievable. I'm just mind blown about this thing. It's greed, greed, greed. There's no way in hell. Did people look at him and say, oh, maybe he's on the autistic spectrum, that he's some savant or something. Oh, he claimed that he was a coder or whatever. That's the only thing that makes sense. Like, people thought, oh, in the whole, it's a .com bubble. He was a coder. He's a crypto guy. Oh, he's got a FTX, this platform, and this FTT coin, and oh, we're gonna make $1 billion, and let's throw $100 million at him because we'll make $1 billion. We're gonna go 100x. You know, there was all kinds of fucking people promoting coins saying, you know, 10x, 100x. Okay, so if you threw $1 million at something, that it could possibly be $100 million. Like, there was so much greed going on in the last year of crypto. Do we need to look at the... Let's look at the chart again, right? See if I can bring it up again. Yeah, okay, so, you know, look at this. It's actually pretty incredible. If you got in early on here, this is January 2019. Okay, so somewhere in there, he got in 2019. This is all 2019, which, you know, we can blow that up. I mean, it did have its highs and lows. March. This is December, January, February 2020. Okay, so, and then this was the Black Swan event of COVID. Because other than that, things were heading up. But, so, and then COVID happened. And then holy crap. Look at that. Holy crap. I mean, this looks endless. This looks endless. If you bought down here, holy crap. If you bought down here at $5,000 and look at this thing go. It went up to $64,000. That's more than a 10x. And then, yeah, then stuff happened. But then it came back again and even topped that to almost $70,000. And then. Okay, so if he obviously didn't sell. He didn't sell enough at the top or anywhere down the lines. And he leveraged and he over leveraged and then he just kept leveraging. And then he kept stealing more and more people's to cover that loss. Because that's huge. That's a huge loss. We're talking 90%. I've lived it. Stuff lost 90% value. From November last year to November this year, we've lost just about 90%. It's brutal. If you didn't sell at the right time, well, that's what happens.
You thought you had too many boards.
Yeah. And can you hear me here?
Yep, we can all hear you.
Yep, cool. So we didn't talk about much, but there's a board of FTX Japan, there's a board of FTX US derivatives, FTX Australia, FTX Singapore, FTX Europe. We had, I think, more than a dozen boards when you look at all of the entities put together. And many of these boards had regulatory functions. I think the problem to some extent was, okay, sure, you have all these boards, but
check out
at
his
the end of the day, when push comes to shove,
shaking
who's the person who's
arm
in charge of global or the board or the function that's in charge of global.
There's not a
customer risk
fan
management.
behind him
Like
making his
there's a
t-shirt.
diffusion of responsibility to some extent on that front, and there needed to be, I think, a single or a small set of entities, whether of boards, people, of responsible parties that were sitting there saying, I feel responsible for what happens on FTX. And we had actually audited financials. From the FTX finances perspective, we had infrastructure, but from the customer risk and finances perspective, much less.
Sam, how much money do you have left at this point?
To my knowledge, like, close to nothing. I mean,
What does that
basically
mean?
everything was just in the companies. I mean, it's
You didn't put away some
unless-
money somewhere?
no. I don't have any hidden funds here. Everything I have, I'm disclosing, and I'm down to I think I have one working credit card left. I think it might be $100,000 or something like that.
Fuck, $100,000. Oh, just Nothing. I got nothing. Unbelievable. This guy, yeah, $100,000 is like pocket change to this guy. He's got nothing if he has $100,000. Unbelievable. He has these $100 million properties that hopefully get seized. This guy is so delusional. It's unbelievable. He's lying through his ass. Every statement he has made. I'm sure a body analysis, looking down and to the left, he can't look up. Everything he says is just absolute bullshit. If you want to go to Robert Gouveia, is the lawyer that is analyzing his the documents of his arrest, and yeah, there's all kinds of information in there. He's absolutely lying. Everything he has said in this whole interview is a lie. And at one point, the interviewer had asked him about whether his lawyers thought it was a good idea for him to be doing this interview, and he said no. But he's lying. He just lied through the whole thing. So, I don't know, what's the difference? Like, it's just, it's amazing. It's funny, and because it's not funny. The guy ripped off billions of fucking dollars. He's a Madoff and an Enron combined probably times 10. And I can't believe that people fell for this. It's just mind-boggling. Okay, I will put a link in there about the better sources if you want to watch this whole interview and Robert Gervais' analysis and going through the court documents. It's pretty interesting. Anyway, okay, that's it for now. Ciao.